Okay, welcome everybody. We are mentioned a few weeks ago, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of different things with this class over the next months and the year. But we're on prayer right now. I think we've been enjoying talking about prayer and thinking about prayer. We welcome Rivka for the first time to the class, newly retired, right?
Yeah, it's 3 days.
3 days. Wow. Mazel tov. Wow. We hadn't seen you minion for 5 years, and suddenly we are. And we welcome David and Bonnie back from Spain, rain in Spain.
Thank you.
We did have
rain?
rain for 24 hours. It
Wow.
was wonderful. We
Mhm.
hadn't rained since May.
Wow. Not since May. Just like
Which is
Israel.
normal.
Yeah,
that's
that's
it's
looks like.
normal, but you know, we
Yeah.
had 3 years, we had a drought for 3 years before that.
Wow. So the little flowers came out.
Well, the flowers are always there because we water, but
Very nice. So for last week we started going into Amud HaTfilah, which is the Baal Shem Tov study on prayer. And have about maybe 12, 15 teachings here, but we only got through 2 or 3 of them because we're really going deeply into it. But we talked first about this idea of how do we make our words shine when we pray? How do we make them have a luster so that they're alive? They're not just. So we talked about in general, what does it mean when we give a talk or when we speak and our words have life? And the Baal Shem Tov used the language for every letter contains world, souls, divinity. When our words are alive, they contain all the spiritual life in them that causes immeasurable pleasure and delight, which is a nice thing to have. We're all looking for immeasurable pleasure and delight. And then we talked about, well, the pathway to one of the pathways to making your words shine is putting all your strength into the pronunciation of the words and to go from letter to letter with intentionality so that you forget your physicality, go from being present in the physical to being more and more taken up in what you're doing. He said, sounds very nice, but how do you actually get there? And then we brought the teaching of it. It's like collecting flowers in a field, and every flower is when you collect flowers for a loved one, the first flower and the last flower are all attached in your mind because they're all attached by the intention of bringing flowers to your beloved. And so when you pray, instead of letting it let your mind run off to Spain or wherever it is, to do our best to keep our minds focused for all of it, but with the intentionality that we're bringing something beautiful to the universe. You're making a bouquet to God and for the universe. Anybody have any thoughts or anything questions from last week?
Did you talk about just the notion of paying attention and how important that is?
What do you pay attention to?
Maybe that paying attention might be the whole thing. Concentration, paying attention, focusing your consciousness to a single point. And what happens then is you actually, as the agent of that, appear to yourself. And you can spend a lot of time trying to understand who this agent is. But focusing is the whole big deal, I think, this stuff. It doesn't matter what you focus on. Content doesn't matter so much. It's the art of focusing itself.
Well, focus. I think focusing is good. It is hard in a 2-hour Saturday morning service to keep focus. It's a long time to stay focused, which is why there's other things going on too. But I do think that there may be a difference between prayer and meditation. As a meditation, there is a sense of just being focused on one point, not every meditation. But in prayer, there's focus, but there's also something else going on. There's kind of like an outpour of words, of thoughts, of something that is. I'm not sure that focusing brings that immeasurable pleasure and delight. it can bring nothingness, it can bring a peace. But so maybe there is a difference there between prayer and meditation, in that sense.
But in meditation, that, and in prayer, you're focusing on, first on the letters and
Yes.
the words of the prayer.
Yes.
Meditation, I think, is,
Go straight into the nothing, straight into the, yeah.
and
Well, the goal of prayer in many ways is meditation. So the Jewish prayer is meant to take you to a meditative place. So when you're praying the Midah, right? You're swaying, but you're supposed to be more and more into silence. We'll get to that more. But even the prayer we're supposed to be the most focused for, our most important prayer is the Shema. And you put your hand in front of your eyes, which is a way of increasing concentration. So you're supposed to be in meditation for at least the first line of the Shema. And then, so most of our prayers, if you say them without concentration, the Talmud has a whole conversation. Well, if you say it without concentrating, you have to go back and say it all again. And so they say that would be too hard, right? Because you would spend your whole time going back, be all there all day, going back again and again and again into all your prayers. But it says if you're saying the first line of the Shema and you found your mind was wandering too much, you should go back and say it again. So it's realistic about your average human being. But there is a discussion, meaning that there were some of the rabbis that thought you should have focus, and if your prayer didn't have focus, start again from the very beginning, you know. But those rabbis did not win out because the others felt it wasn't pragmatic, it wasn't realistic for people.
May I
Yes.
ask a question? A good morning. I have two questions. One is a pedestrian question, which is the readings are the same. Is that right? As
That's
last
correct.
week, the same set of pages. I just want to
The
make
same
sure.
path.
Okay, good. So then I was in the right place. And part of that question was in the middle of the pages, part of it is in like the third person about the Baal Shem Tov. So is that part of it is one of his disciples or somebody talking about him, and the other is somebody recording or apparently recording his own words, or is that what's going on there?
also 40,
It's like page.
Which number are you talking about?
48.
It's on. It's
We'll get
toward
to
the
it.
end. Toward the end, it's on page 5 and 6. It says it's from something called Darkei Tzedek. The Baal Shem Tov was emphatic about this. The Baal Shem Tov told his disciples.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to see if that was.
Yeah. No. Thank you for bringing that. Yeah. No. It's a. I mean, the Baal Shem Tov himself did not author any books that we know of. So everything that comes from him comes from his students. And so often his all the teachings, even you read the Baal Shem Tov ala Torah, which is the main book of work, is about the Baal Shem Tov, it will say it's all teachings by his students who said, I heard from my master, the teacher, and then they give the teaching that he gave. And sometimes and because they're collecting it, they'll sometimes have the same teaching 5 or 6 times, but collected from different students at different times, because each one brings up a different aspect. And so some of these teachings have included the parts where they're talking about the Baal Shem Tov, or I guess included the narration of the person bringing the teaching. Other times they've played around with the language, or just quoted the Baal Shem Tov as they heard him that day. But even number 15, the one that started the whole series, and again, all of this is on one parsha of Noah, in the Baal Shem Tov ala Torah, and in the one about making a window for the ark and your letters, that teaching appears 6 or 7 times in a row, but every time it has a slightly different focus and a slightly different expression of what it's saying. And so not sure if this is a case of everybody hearing it differently, or if it was just, or if you repeated the same teaching many times and different people report it different times.
Well, that's very helpful. Then my other question was,
Sure.
when you're talking about the focus, is this the same or different from as you understand it, from the kavanah that we read about in some places? Or is it the
Sure,
same word even somewhere? Because I haven't seen
Sure,
the.
Kavanah is the same. Kavanah is the same. I mean, the Baal Shem Tov doesn't talk that much about Kavanah. He goes
Uh-huh.
into, he uses other words. Kavanah is very Talmudic and kind of mainstream rabbinic.
Oh,
But he does use it, but he's got a whole other wide vocabulary of. But Kavanah comes from the word lekaven, which means to direct or to focus, and kavanah means to have an intention or to pray with focus. It can mean a bunch of different things. So let's go to number 41. We read the first few last time. Actually, we're gonna go to number 45. We're gonna skip 41. We're gonna skip some of these. I went back to them. I found them to be a little too intense. Bonnie, would you mind, with Alan gone, do you mind reading from 40?
45.
45, yeah.
When a person is on a low level, it is better for him to look in the prayer book while he prays, because seeing the letters will give him the ability to pray with more concentration. However, when he cleaves to the supernal world, it is better for him to shut his eyes so that he doesn't see anything that may disrupt his mystical attachment.
Supernal to the upper worlds. So when someone feels connected, I would say when you feel connected, it's better to shut your eyes because then you're taking up in it, right? And our main problem in prayer and meditation is our senses are used to going outwards, right?
Right.
You open your eyes and suddenly you notice the world around you and you start thinking about it.
That's right, and that
all your
interferes
senses go on.
with
But
the meditative state.
Yeah, well, he's talking about disrupt his mystical attachment. So the end goal of
Yes.
this is mystical attachment,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That's interesting that people don't quite understand the meaning
Yes.
of prayer. If mystical attachment, which has nothing to do with asking God for favors,
For self,
is the end goal, then you go at this in a different way.
Yeah, no, really interesting point. Yeah, people asking God for a new bike is not the number one, not the number one consideration of though there is a prayer does include that as well too, right? I mean, asking God for help or for peacefulness or for some help with something in one's life or but there's a place. I mean, this is how the mystics in prayer. There's a moment for that, but there's a moment where you transcend all of it, and I think it's a really good point. He's taking it for granted, but the mystical attachment is the goal of prayer. So, what do you get out of mystical attachment?
Well, the attachment itself, if you achieve that,
Yeah,
can be a thing in itself. I think people that get to that place
yes,
don't have utility for it.
yeah.
It itself has a utility. And because of the way
And it transforms them.
well,
yeah.
it makes you feel, what does it make you feel when you've got your hooks into the supernal?
Which makes you feel more alive, makes you feel expansive, makes you feel like you're shining.
Yeah.
And it's makes you feel like that's the only way to lead life. The rest of the time, what the heck are you doing? So what does he talk about? When the person on a low level, it is better for him or her to look in the prayer book while he prays. And seeing the letters give him the ability to pray with more concentration.
Well, he needs something to hook himself
Right,
on.
something to make your mind, make the mind follow. So just looking at the words and having them follow the words. And I mean, when you read the words of the Siddur, you look at the translation, you realize it's saying the same thing over and over and over again, right? It's saying, thank you, God, God is great, thank you, God is great. You redeemed us, you helped us, please redeem us now, please help us now. That's a lot of it, right? So the ideas are a little bit repetitive, but just looking and concentrating on helps one take off, and then, but then to close your eyes when you're, and so this is why in a silent prayer, the Amidah, right, which we pray, I recommend to people if they've got,
Who's calling?
they have the ability to learn them by heart as much as possible. If you can learn parts of the prayer by heart, then that allows, or if you don't mind, just close your eyes in the middle of the service. That gives you the ability to really focus and let yourself take it up. If there's a place in prayer where you're just sitting there and it's washing over you and kind of thinking and it's peaceful. But if you really close your eyes and focus on something and suddenly you feel like you're reaching somewhere, it's better to keep your eyes closed, and then be focused in that place for a little while. And not, I mean, it's,
I think they're talking in the first sentence here about actually practicing in the beginning in order to get to the next level. Practicing on your concentration and paying attention to the letters of the words.
part of it is when you have a 2-hour service, you have a lot of back and forth,
Right.
and so it's, or you come into it cold. If you meditate before, I taught a 2.5-hour class on Jewish meditation last week to the rabbinical students in Los Angeles, and I talking about how, when you meditate before you pray, then you can skip the beginning of the service, which is all really to get your spiritual being revved up, because you're already revved up for the prayer, you're already ready to go. But here they're giving you an ability, like I think what you're saying, to get up the mind, go into the prayer experience. One thing that's interesting about the eyes open and shut is that in non-Orthodox, and some conservative synagogues different, but the person who leads the service looks on at everybody, right? When whoever leads the service in our synagogue looks at everybody else, and everybody else looks at that person, right? And maybe it helps people pray a little bit to see that person, whether it's the cantor or someone else, kind of hand movements or do that. But traditionally, when I was in rabbinical school, another place I've been, the person who prays always faces the ark. The person who prays faces that way, because it's distracting to look at the person's face while they pray, because then you're drawn by their face and you think about them. And for the person who's praying, it's distracting to look at everybody. So the prayer, traditionally, the person who leads the prayer faces the ark, and the sound of their voice and the intentionality they bring into their voice should be what guides people in their own prayer experience. So it makes the whole thing a little bit more meditative. We've made it a little bit more, it helps people connect to see that, especially if you don't understand the Hebrew or have a lot of prayer, it's helpful to see the cantor kind of move his hands.
Right.
Do his
And singing and praying at the same time.
Praying and singing at the same time. So the person leading the service does pray at the same time when they're facing the other way, but they're just focused, they're just looking that way.
Well,
focus on prayer. Exactly.
I think it's a really different experience, because one is you're a spectator because there's somebody performing in front of you, and the other is you're all participants, and those are very different roles.
Yep.
I agree with that very much, and I remember, I'm old enough to remember in the when the cantor in a big conservative shul in Philadelphia, when they changed it so that he was formerly facing the ark, and then they turned him around, and when they built their fancy new shul in the suburbs, they had him facing the congregation, and I always this is not a reflection on the Chazan now, but I always feel it's better to face everybody facing the ark, and some of the conservative shuls have the like in the old Polish shul, maybe have the cantor in a low spot with rows of pews or chairs around him, so that people can see him from the side, but but at least a lot of people can. And but they're all together toward the ark. I know it's hopeless to make this point, but I after what Barbara said, it was so strong. I wanted to say that. That's all.
What,
Well, it's funny because my son-in-law is Israeli and has always gone, when he did go to shul, he went to Orthodox, and he can't go in a synagogue where they're facing. It's just too foreign to him.
yeah, it does change the whole dynamic, and here what we're talking about, right, that you can shut your eyes. When everybody's facing the same way, you can shut your eyes because nobody's looking at anybody else. Everybody else is just praying. I mean, people do look at each other a little bit for sure. Everybody's kind of in the prayer mode, especially during the Amidah. But when you're facing people, it makes a difference.
So when your eyes are closed, what are you seeing? What are you looking to see? How are you orienting your inner space to be able
Yeah.
to, what do you, have you got a map for that, Rabbi? You can tell us how that works.
I mean, I think it's different for everybody. I think it depends how visual or not you are. But I think that when you close your eyes, I mean, it's hard for me because I've been meditating for a long time, so I'm just used to it. But I think if you're not used to meditating, when you close your eyes, you're used to going to sleep. And so it's a different experience in going to sleep, closing your eyes when you're focusing in prayer or meditation, right? It's not sleep. It's being more focused in a space. I mean, one can visualize, right? There's all kinds of visualizations one can do. But I think in prayer, because there's already something happening, which is the sound of the prayer, your mind can be on that prayer, and really you're trying to ascend to a higher state of mind. Or you're trying to let go of any other thoughts and just be in that moment. You're trying to just completely allow yourself to be in it. And I've been in prayer services where or even here, I always talk about musical Shabbat, but when musical Shabbat gets going, people are singing and people are but I feel their eyes are half open and half closed in some strange kind of way, because they're somewhat focused inwards. I think human beings have a natural knowledge, wisdom to do that when they're reaching a spiritual state that goes beyond the senses.
Whenever you add music, I
Yes,
think it's very uplifting.
yeah.
Have music and prayer at the same time.
Music, it's very uplifting to have. And when people go to the symphony, sometimes you close your eyes, right? You take in the sound of it, and it just kind of transports you. But there you're a spectator. You're not you're taking in what someone else is doing. And when you add spiritual intention to hopefully what the prayer leader has, you can ascend through the intention of the leader. So there's a way of singing prayer where the words really vibrate, right? When the sound of the vibration of the words really vibrate, it almost gives us an ability to vibrate with them, to meet their vibration. So I think just an example, but a lot of people, Avinu Malkeinu, that's one of the prayers that people really know and love, and they can feel it, and so they can connect to the sound of it, and it takes them to a specific place. I mean, the Reb Zalman says that every real prayer was inspired from the state of mind of the person who authored it. And so it's almost like it's almost like that person was in that place or was in that place when they authored that prayer. And then so that prayer is like a road back to that same place.
And music works like that too.
Music works, the state of inspiration.
Great composers who put this together were describing an inner experience that they were having. If you listen really carefully, you can share that inner experience.
with Mozart, one feels it so much in all of his music, but you know, when you feel you're taken into a different state of mind, we're taken in with a lot of them too, but you feel you can, and so the same thing with a prayer and the melody too. And if the person who's leading it has spiritual intention, which is the one thing that's sometimes missing in a symphony, they're trying to create beautiful music, but don't always have a spiritual intention. When the person leading the prayer has a spiritual intention too, that adds a little magic, which can make the whole thing really. And then what I was thinking about and talking about shutting your eyes, I think that naturally human beings, when you're taken to a state of mind that's not physical, your eyes automatically shut because your senses are no longer being engaged in the same way.
This is kind of off topic, but
Yeah,
do you have any idea about people who are blind and what this means in terms of closing their eyes for prayer or not?
maybe prayer is easier for them because they don't have the distraction
That's
of.
right.
I mean, they can have busy minds, but they don't have the distraction of the
Of other people and things.
of other
going on.
people and things around them, and they can just focus on the sound. But it'd be interesting to ask. Yeah. Let's move to number 47, David, if you mind reading us.
Person should proceed level by level in his prayers and not spend all his energy at the beginning. Rather, he should start slowly and in the middle, attach himself with great cleaving to God. Then he will even be able to say the words of prayer quickly. Even though he cannot pray with mystical attachment at the beginning of the prayers, he should still say the words with great concentration. He should keep applying himself slowly until God helps him to pray with greater attachment.
So
Yeah,
just
that's what we were talking about before.
It's almost as if the content of the prayer is very, very secondary. It's the activity and the pay. I feel the paying
Yeah.
attention. It's the focusing your mind to pay attention. And do you teach attention exercises in your meditation classes?
for sure, attention is part of it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
concentration.
But it's concentration, big concentration, concentrating the mind, and but I do think it's different than it's paying attention and watching it, but there's another spiritual muscle too, which is of flowing with it.
Well, you gotta be,
Flowing.
you're paying attention
You have
to
to be-
lofty things.
Lofty things, and then flowing with it, or opening oneself up to flow into it. I taught about this in my 2.5 hour meditation class, but Aryeh Kaplan, who was one of the rabbis who brought back Jewish meditation in the modern era, and who believes that the prophets meditated and talks about it, and he talks about a swimming meditation. What's swimming meditation? He says that the first time in the Torah that we have someone meditating, which is Isaac, goes out into the fields to meditate, the word is also to swim. And so he feels it's like you're swimming through consciousness, right? And so prayer is also in that space where you can feel like but you have to get there, right? This is what what we just read is about. So it's, if you feel like you're having a hard time getting there, don't max out at the beginning, right? Don't put all your focus into the beginning and then you're tired for the next hour and a half. But allow yourself to slowly get into it, allow yourself to ease and to sing a little bit. And this is something that I think is hard for us because the awareness of the structure of the service there's not that many chazanim these days who really do this, but right, the most intense part of the prayer is supposed to be the middle of the prayer, in the Amidah, the Kedusha, right? When you go on your tippy toes and you say Kadosh, 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 that's supposed to be when you have the greatest intention. And I've been in prayer spaces. My father talks about this in the Haredi world, in the Hasidic world, where they really are totally focused. You can feel like there's we talk about words shine, you can feel like there's a wind, like a spiritual wind that goes through the whole congregation at that moment, because everybody's focusing knows that that's the moment where we're all, supposed to be, and it's transformative because everybody's words are shining at the same time. Well, I think for us, there's only a little bit of awareness that that's any different than any other prayer that's going on, right? We just go through them as a kind of general, and so there are places that direct us. And I think one of the things that's amazing about communal prayer when it actually works, if you have everybody, like Avinu Malkeinu, right? Everybody loves that moment because people know that, love that melody. And there's a feeling in synagogue when you sing Avinu Malkeinu on holidays that it's almost echoing beyond just the people there, right? It's just kind of had a life of its own. And you could continue on singing Avinu Malkeinu, or when you have the Who by Fire and Rosh Hashanah Yikatevu, but also another one of those moments where you feel the whole congregation chanting kind of goes beyond. And so I think in one's own prayer, even if this would be my goal for our synagogue, and I've tried to get there a little bit, but problem is getting everybody who prays here on the Saturday morning, any other time to come, is that if I feel if half of the people there had that intention, when you would get to that place of the service where we're all supposed to have a lot of intention, and everybody suddenly concentrated their mind at that time, it would feel really special. And actually, I've done all kinds of things at different moments it's work, but it's very hard to maintain it. But I think on Friday nights, when we have Friday nights here, for example, it's easier because the cantor is now using a microphone. When the cantor's voice is too loud, it almost takes over everything. And it makes me feel like one doesn't have to pray. All you have to do is listen, right? I just listen and mumble a little bit, and I'm okay. And so I think that when you can lower the volume of the person who's praying, and also if you don't have a microphone, you have to modulate to the sound of everybody else's prayer. It creates more that feeling of communal prayer and less.
Well, in some sense, then you're saying the individuality disappears in the sense of communal prayer.
Exactly.
Where your sense of self disappears.
Exactly.
And so you become part of sort of a group
whole. Yeah.
feeling, a group mind.
Exactly. Beautiful. Yeah. And so then you take these things that we're reading about, but you apply them on a group level and they're multiplied. Go ahead. Yeah.
Still finding prayer a challenge. And a moving trying to follow.
I think it's great. It's totally fine. The English is the rabbis said, you can pray the whole thing in English except for the Shema. They would prefer if you pray it in Hebrew, and the first prayer of the Amidah, everything else you could do in your vernacular, because it's the better you should understand, if you can.
And it's hard to close. I would find it hard to close my eyes, focusing on just keeping up and doing that.
Yeah. So I would say that if somehow, like he was saying, if there's some prayer that you really connect to, or you are connecting to in the prayer service, and suddenly you feel especially connected to the moment, try closing your eyes and let it lose track of what's going on for a few minutes and not worry about it. Rejoin afterwards next time I announce page number or the cantor announce the page number, but allow yourself to have that moment where you're just in it, because that's Baal Shem Tov saying that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get it to that moment. But
May I ask?
Sure.
I realize that you're using the text today and more as a point of departure, maybe, than as a text of the study for itself. But I'm struck by what seems to be the assumption in these texts, that the praying Jew, he knows the prayers. That's why I said you can close your eyes, you do this, you do that, but it's not like you don't have the text firmly in mind, especially the section we read just before this one, where it says, you should look at the prayer book if you're on a low level and so on. So there is the idea that even if, as David says, the content may not be the most important thing at all. If you want something to start you focusing, if you have if you have the prayers, because you daven every day and you have it all in your head very much, or most of it, you can then you can put it aside. But you have to have that starting point. Is that off base?
No, I think it's really correct. I mean, he's talking to people who have a who probably pray 3 times a day, you know, and who are used to doing it. So it does make it a little bit more complicated. But the end goal is still the same, which is to get to the place of transcending the words, getting to the place of beyond what's there. But I think you're right. He's taking for granted that the people have memorized. I mean, we're also talking a few hundred years ago where people memorized things a lot better and more
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah,
Just things,
books are not readily available then either to everybody, hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, books might not have always been available, and I mean, even that's the way they tell. You know, I grew up in France in a very rural area where everything was memorized. It was just part of the culture, you know. My geography lesson, I had to learn it by heart, every single word. And my history lesson, every single thing I just memorized. That's what we were supposed to do. You'd come to class and you regurgitate it. And so training the mind for memory was just part of was the essence, maybe made up for poor teaching skill or creativity, forget about it. But it was all about memory. I think people had strong memories, and you know, you do something 3 times a day, every day, becomes part of you. But I don't think, you know, for us, I mean, I think if once you memorize a prayer, and if you pray with people who memorize a prayer, it gives you something very powerful. And so, but one can get to it without. But I do tell people, I think that if you can memorize the first line, the first paragraph of the Shema, that's a great thing to have under your belt. If you can memorize a little bit of the Amida, that really helps you pray, because then you don't have to be stuck to your prayer book, and you can have your eyes closed and you can really go with it. And you know, but I agree with you. He's not focusing on the content of the words. He's talking about the spiritual experience of praying and how you get to the attachment. Let's go forward a little bit. Unless anybody else have anything else they wanted to mention. Number 49, let's just do that one. Yeah. You know, actually, could you mind doing 48? Go ahead, do 48 first and then 49.
Likewise, first of all, level. In the middle of prayer, you should say the word even a little bit, as much as possible. Afterwards, you should try to engage the previous level, even if it requires very intense. At first, one should think to the form of the word, and then give the word its soul. One should start by applying all his physical energy, and then the power of the soul will shine in him. As the Zohar states, we would discern firm, hidden light. Finally, you'll be able to see God without any physical motions. It is impossible to pray with concentration without help. A person with that God for help and assistance.
A hard statement. So,
Yeah, you know, getting to the soul.
yeah,
Of the word, where's the word?
If you look at a guy named Fichte, who was a German idealist philosopher, he invented something called transcendental idealism. The important, his point is that if you can pay attention to something, intensively pay attention to something, there's something that also appears in your consciousness while you're paying attention to it. So if I look at this thing and I focus on this thing sitting right here, what appears in consciousness, he calls it the I or the subject. Okay, you,
Sure.
you who's paying attention
Mhm.
appears in consciousness.
Mhm.
That, I think, this guy is calling the soul. So the soul and the I, you know, the thing is if you're focused on something, you're what's going to appear in your mind is yourself. That's your soul. And as you focus on your soul, in addition to what you're actually paying attention to, then this sort of magical ascension happens.
Mm.
It's
But there's an element of that, but there's also, he's also calling, because he earlier was saying, give the words, in every word there's soul, there's power, there's divinity, and so there's seems a sense of that witnessing, but there's also a sense of it, the being alive, you know, the life in it. Like again, like when you're singing Avinu Malkeinu, for example, and the words suddenly feel alive, like they're echoing through, and so he's saying there's soul inside the words at that point.
So at that
And so-
point, you're in touch with your soul.
You're attached with your soul, which is maybe what's allowing you
then-
to see it,
yeah.
but he would say there's something else in his mind. Objectively, the words are being filled with spiritual power.
Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
feeling spiritual power, your
Yeah.
I, your subject.
You're awake to be able to see it.
No, you're
but-
not witnessing. Yeah, it's different.
But
You
he's
know-
talking about that the actual object has its own soul.
Mhm.
Right, or in a certain sense.
Well, we all have an element of soul that we all share. There's a soul beneath the universe and you know, so you're putting soul into it, you know, which you could just say putting intention into it, but there is something almost magical, as you were saying in the Descendants, but here it's give the word its soul, right? So it's shining, you know, it's like give that quality. So it comes from you, but you're giving it you're transmitting it into it.
If you go to watch a symphony live or
Yeah.
watch it.
Yes.
Movie or
Yeah.
on TV,
Yeah.
the soul of that instrument.
Yes.
I mean, the instrument is filled with its own soul,
Mhm.
and hopefully that's gonna come into
Exactly.
you.
Aren't you also trying to release soul?
Its own soul, you're saying?
Yeah. Loosely, the
There-
power of the word.
Yeah, there is something that some of these words, there's a belief that they've been powered through thousands of years of use, you know, that there's kind of in these universal unconscious, they have a special place. Why pray these words and not just say, you know, something completely mundane? The bus is leaving at 3 o'clock. The bus is leaving at 3 o'clock.
It has
But,
have to be lofty
The
things.
words have to be lofty, but there's also this same sense of the Hebrew language having, or
That's
words, some words
right.
having something associated with them. But the last thought that was coming is when you go to a symphony, there's experience you get where every single musician is just playing it perfectly and the whole has beauty. And that's nice, right? And every time you go to CSO, that's the minimum you're going to get, right? Because they're an incredible orchestra. But every now and then, I haven't gone in years, but once I went to see Sir Isaac Schiff, who's a piano player. And somehow, this one time I saw him, he was alive with the piano. He and the piano were one, you know, in a completely other way. And the music had soul to it in a whole other way. You know, it's like it was, you know, and this whole thing, he looked like he was a Renaissance piano player, and it was just his whole soul was bound up in it. And so I think it's the same thing here, which is when you bring soul to what you do, it creates a spiritual reaction that then and we can do it with our own prayer individually, and that helps the collective prayer. But in your own prayer, we can have those little moments where you're on fire with the whole thing, you know, just like, you know, most professions, you have that experience where it goes from being professional to art or to sure it's psychotherapists too, right? They have those moments with a client where suddenly something real is happening in that moment, and all the right words come, and all the right thing comes together, where you are, where they are, and it's almost like you're not even speaking. There's like it's happening automatically, right? And it's magical. And you hope it's transformed that person. They come back next week and they're pretty much the same, but something deep down has happened, those things happen. So, let's go ahead.
It says, what, as Zohar states, when wood does not burn, hit it.
I'm not sure actually.
Native.
That's what I thought, but maybe you're right.
It's
Maybe it's
a creation of pressure.
yeah, friction.
Keep pressure. And you create pressure internally. Ascend, so to speak.
Yes.
It's a pressure.
Yeah. Friction, trying to really, it's a spiritual muscle to develop.
Rubbing the sticks again.
You're rubbing the sticks inside of you to like,
Yeah, that's right. There are two sticks inside. And rubbing really hard. And it's like,
you're all trying to let's go to number 51, page 4. Those that don't mind reading that one too.
if someone's that maybe.
That's Charles.
Charles, you have something in the back. Oh, he just muted. Okay. All right, Leslie, go ahead.
Number 51.
51, yeah.
Sometimes a person prays with constricted consciousness until in 1 minute the light of the soul shines and he rises to the supreme world, like a person who climbs a ladder. Thus it is written, send your light and your truth, they will lead me. That is the supreme light.
It's a description of this process kind of that we're talking about. That it's sometimes what's constricted, and so all the Hasidim, they saw the world in 2 ways. Small mind, big mind. Everything is small mind and big mind, and that everything they're trying to do is to get you to big mind. Still exists in modern Hebrew, Rosh Gadol, Rosh Katan. It's kind of
Expansion.
big mind, small, but so they're saying, you constricted consciousness is you're in your own self and you're beset in your things, and something big mind is when you feel free and see the patterns of things, and feel like you're part of something larger, and that
You've left the cave.
you've left the cave, you've walked out of the cave. And even someone was saying how walking into our sanctuary, that's the purpose, right? You're in this your foyer is really small ceiling, and you walk into the sanctuary and you right, high ceiling. It's meant to give you that feeling of being. But saying in prayer too, you can be in a really constricted, but if you're focused, there can be suddenly a moment where suddenly it opens up for one, and suddenly you feel more. Something opens up. The light of the soul shines, and you rise to the supernal world, like a person who climbs a ladder. It's like you're in the cave, or you're in the basement. There's no ladder and you're stuck there, and suddenly someone drops down the ladder and opens it up, and you see the light, and you go up towards the light. Thank God I'm out of the basement. I'm out of the cave. This is what, right? And then it's connecting to the verses from Psalms. I mean, the book of Psalms, half of the book of Psalms is about all of this, right? It's about God, when you turn your face away from me, what can I do? I feel this. But when you turn your face towards me, I am. Right? All the Psalms are about all these spiritual movements, from feeling closed off to feeling opened up, and feeling, the Spirit is with you, to feeling no Spirit is with you. And when you don't feel the Spirit with you, you feel like, you might have all this weep. When the Spirit is with you, you feel like I could do anything. So those are the words of the Psalm. So much of the Psalms are about these movements and these spiritual emotions. Let's go to number 60. Rivka, would you mind reading number 60?
Joyce prayers is certainly more acceptable to God. that depressed and tearful prayers. For example, even though a poor man might en- e- e- entreat the king with great tears and cries, he still received only a little. However, when a prince joyfully prays the king and then makes his request, the king bestows upon him greatly, and they give to royalty.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, there's a place where if you're really having a hard time, you cry out.
Oh,
There
well,
might be
that's different.
I call out from the thing, but there's a sense of being in joy evokes spirit in a more, in an easier way. When you're joyful, then somehow, because God is all joy, God is all bliss, God is all truth. And so when you're in a little bit of joy, it's easier to access that all joy, all truth, all this. And when you're just feeling a bit down or whatever, then it's hard to jump from that and get. And so when you're there, you're reaching with like straws, and so you get a little bit there, over that. But if you're of joy and somebody reach out with more joy, it's like the whole thing can come flooding down and give one. And so Rabbi Nachman always talked about this. You want to try and be in joy, let the rest melt away. Let's go to number 80. We're going to skip around. Some of these are a little bit intense.
When you pray, you should concentrate on arousing the letters through which the heaven and earth, the upper and lower creatures, and all the worlds were created. Then all the worlds and the entire creation will recite the words of prayer and praise with you. For the letters you invoked are the vitality of all creatures. This intention elevates all of creation in heaven and on earth. When people of a high spiritual level pray with this intention, they also arouse the letters of individuals on a low level, so that they too can pray with great concentration and exuberance and become better people.
Let's stop there.
That's the same thing that Nachman said.
Yes.
That somehow if you get there, if you get to the supernal place, you automatically have pulled some people with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably needs to be openness for those people too, but there's a sense of, there's a story that says the Baal Shem Tov, the one Rosh Chodesh, right, the new month, he was praying the Hallel, and he was so in another state that he was shaking, couldn't get through the words. And this went on and on and on. Nobody dared disturb him because they were totally in this other space too. He was shaking with the spiritual intensity of what he was going through. Eventually, they had to carry him off. And he was totally taken up. And they said, from that day there was never been any other Rosh Chodesh like that one. And it wasn't just that they were like in their regular space. There he was, but they were all affected by the intensity of what Baal Shem Tov was going through. And then I love the sense in which, you're it's not just you're bringing in the whole cosmos. There's a sense of everything, the oneness of all of creation gets invoked when we pray with spiritual intention, and we become, because we're one with everything, it becomes real and alive. And you invoke the vitality of all creatures. You can draw in the vitality is everywhere around you. Very beautiful. Let's end number 96. Very beautiful.
When a person begins to pray, as soon as he says the words, Lord, open my lips, the divine presence clothes itself in him and speaks his words of prayer.
This is, so that's, you say, those are the words you say before you say the Amida, right, the silent prayer. You say the nights, just like a little introduction. So when you're, go ahead.
If a person believes this, he will certainly experience fear and awe. God also contracts himself, as it were, and rests with him, as it says, he peers through the cracks. That is, through the letters which are the palaces. A person goes from palace to palace during the prayer service and is judged in each one as to whether he deserves to enter. If he would only realize that they are judging him when extraneous thoughts enter his mind, he would certainly pray with more concentration. Problem is, he forgets that they are judging him.
So I would use different words than judging.
Judging
Yeah.
sounds a little harsh.
Sounds a little harsh, but I would say it's more like,
Who's the person?
I would say it's more like a, you know, a reaction, right? The universe responds to where you are. So if your mind is open and connecting to the universe, then the universe and God allows you to go further and further into it. If your mind is on Kiddush, then there's no room in your mind for the other to come in,
That's
right?
right.
Because your mind is full of Kiddush, and there's a stop here, but a saying, you know, the person comes to the Rebbe and says, you know, you always talk about, you know, clearing your mind, but my mind is too full. How can there's no space in my mind for anything else. I can't put anything else. And the Rebbe laughs and says, that's like saying that, you know, in a room as big as the country of Ukraine, there's no room for more furniture. And that's that we have infinite space within. We have literally filled it with that much junk that there's. So it's how we can remove some of the junk within and make space.
The other interesting notion is the
Yeah.
crack.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
crack, as if you're a container, and most of the time the container
Yeah.
is being made opaque
Yes.
by your language, your thoughts, your distractions, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden there's a place that is a crack, a
Yeah.
place opens up, and you're in touch with something that seems to be outside your container,
Mhm.
which you can call
Well,
the
here-
supernal world.
Here it's the imagery is from Song of Songs, so it's of a lover peering through the lattice work at you. So
Sure, it's great.
imagine you're suddenly looking, there's God's eye looking at you. Whoa. You know, and that's
Well,
enough to-
people used to, in the old
Yeah.
days, they used to think that the stars
yes,
were actually cracks or holes
right,
in the heavenly
right,
Empyrean,
right.
which was a
All
sort of
light,
cover,
yeah,
covered the
yeah.
whole thing up, but there are little holes, you know, for the stars. And I sort of like that better
Uh-huh.
than the modern view of what a
Mhm.
star is. Actually.
Infinity,
Is where the light
Okay.
comes.
Right.
right, cracks are like,
right.
it's the, was it, the singer, Hallelujah, right?
I don't know if
Leonard
the-
Cohen, Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cracks.
Yeah, he talked about cracks too. And there was a famous book that was written called The
Yeah.
Crack in the Cosmic Egg. I don't know if you've read that.
Sounds familiar. This,
Yeah.
That's an old.
That was
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
60s or 70s. That was an interesting book.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I think what
Well,
this
we'll want to
conversation
figure
has
out.
been about is a little bit deeper than what I'm going to say. But it
Thank
strikes me
you.
that an element of this
Yes.
is kind of like meditation in the sense of being present and your mind. And as you get better at that, you are able to concentrate more. Like I say, I know that what we've been talking about is deeper than this, but it seems like an element is similar to that in that, you know, that concentration in meditation, you know, keeping your mind and present in the moment is similar to what some of the stuff is here with concentrating in prayer. Is that correct or not correct?
I think that's exactly it. It's kind of like, you know, if you can concentrate in the prayer, then magic can start to happen, you know, and so it's, and then the way I would add with it is that there's different ways of concentrating. If it's too frustrating for you to try and shut out everything, there's a way of kind of like letting the humdrum go on in the back of the mind, but using a different part of the mind to concentrate. Because sometimes if all you're doing is chasing your thoughts, trying to empty the mind, for some people it doesn't work very well. And so it's kind of like just let all the noise kind of fade into the background a little bit and use a different part of your mind to focus in a different direction. And that can help find concentration while the mind is really busy. There's ways, I sometimes feel like I can have all the stuff going on in the background, but my prayer is still wonderful because it's happening in a different part of the mind. You know, I've moved it to a different chamber because it's just where I'm at. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you. Have a good day. Keep warm.
You too.